Hi, Matthew Holmes here from Clear Health Media. Welcome back to the next video in our sequence where we're talking about the overall sales funnel within your practice. And this time what we're going to be talking about is step 3 here, the fail or discharge type of scenario. Now there's a good chance that a large number of people that come into your practice as new patients aren't going to follow the treatment recommendations that you give them, particularly as they go through the acute and the rehab and potentially the wellness stages of care. And if you're not prepared to deal with that fact, you're potentially leaving people with a bad taste in their mouth, with negative baggage around your practice, and you really don't want to be doing that if you want that person to A, come back into your practice at a future stage, and B, to be referring other people to your practice. So what we want to do today is we want to talk about, well, how can you actually mitigate the potential damage that can occur when somebody drops out of care? Now, the first thing about this is that you have to remember that people, when they come in and they sit down with you in their initial report of findings and so on, and you sort of outline the course of care and they say, oh yeah, that's great, doc, no worries, I'd love to do that. Most people will feel a certain amount of guilt and a certain amount of mental baggage associated with the fact that they are no longer complying with something that they actually said that they would comply with. Okay, and they're going to feel angry at you because they've sort of tied you. You might feel like you've tied them into something they didn't really want to do in the end, or there's all sorts of sort of thought processes that can be associated with that. And what you need to do is you need to circumvent that, and you need to basically give them a safe space to fail. So the way that I would recommend you do this is that when you have somebody who drops out of care for any particular reason, I would send them a letter which says something like, "Hi, Mrs. Bloggs, thank you very much for coming along to the practice. We've really appreciated having you in here. You know, your smiling face has been something we would look forward to every time you come in," or something like that. We notice, however, that you haven't attended for your last visit. We understand that things come up in life and things can get in the way. If, however, you didn't mean to drop out of care and things have just been too busy, give us a call on this number and we can get you booked back in. Otherwise, we understand that our care doesn't always suit people all of the way through the process. If you need us in the future, we're here and we'd be more than happy to hear from you. Sincerely, Joe Bloggs, healthcare practitioner, whatever. Okay, so that's just a rough thing just off the top of my head as to what you would send out to people. Obviously you'd need to edit it for your particular situations, but it gives you a bit of an idea. Some people actually recommend that you handwrite these letters. My handwriting's atrocious, as you can tell, so I don't actually tend to do that. I type them and sign them. But if you want to handwrite them, then it gives an even more personal touch. You could do a phone call. I wouldn't delegate this sort of thing to your receptionist. I really think your practitioners need to be doing this, just because it is much better from the patient's point of view, gives a much more personal touch. But you know, if your practitioners are absolutely chockers and so on, and the only way it's going to get done is through your receptionist doing it, then that's better than nothing. Okay, some sort of process needs to be set in place to make sure that these people don't fall through the cracks. The other thing you should do is that those people who don't actually drop out of care but reach a stage where you're actually discharging them from your office, you need to be doing a similar thing where basically you're sending them a letter saying, look, it's been a real delight to have you in the practice. Thank you very much for following our care recommendations. You know, if you know anyone else who could potentially be helped by the type of care that we do, you know, please do recommend them to us. Otherwise, if you ever need us again, just drop us a line. We're more than happy to help you out. Okay, and again, you can type it if you want. You know, I do these as well because of the reason I explained. My handwriting's atrocious. Or you may actually want to handwrite them, which would make them even more personal, etc., etc. So that's another way that you could do this. But regardless, I would definitely be making sure you do this, because if you don't do this process, this reactivation step becomes much harder because of, if nothing else, this mental baggage, and potentially, you know, these guys, if you're not sort of giving them a farewell, you know, they're not going to think of you any differently as perhaps somebody they saw in a shop somewhere. Okay, so it just becomes much more transactional, whereas if you actually take the time to write them a letter, it becomes a lot more personal and a lot more personal interaction there. So definitely recommend you do that. In the next video, I'm going to be diving into sort of reactivation strategies and how they are sort of the final missing piece of this overall puzzle and this sales funnel within your practice. So keep an eye out for that when it shows up in your inbox.